My brothers and sisters, may the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. The disciples approached Jesus and said, "Why do you speak to the crowd in parables?" He said to them in reply, "Because knowledge of the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven has been granted to you, but to them it has not been granted. To anyone who has, more will be given, and he will grow rich. From anyone who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, because they look but they do not see, and they hear but they do not listen or understand. Isaiah's prophecy is fulfilled in them, which says, 'You shall indeed hear but not understand. You shall indeed look but never see. Gross is the heart of this people. They will hardly hear with their ears. They've closed their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and be converted, and I heal them. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. Amen, I say to you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it." The Gospel of the Lord. Back in the late 70s, I was director of St. Ignatius Renewal Center out in Clarence, and among the programs that we had there were a score of confirmation retreats during the course of the year. And the average year, we'd have about 4,000 kids come through for these retreats. And one of the exercises we would do with them sort of consistently was we'd put them into rows and whisper a particular message to the first and have them pass it on to the one after them. So it would go through about 10, 15 kids. And then we'd ask finally around the 15th kid, "What did you hear?" And 9 times out of 10, it was totally different from what the first message was. Either it's totally changed to something completely different, or there's such a change in it that we hardly recognize it at all. And of course, that bespeaks the fact of how, as Jesus suggests in the gospel today, that sometimes we listen but we don't really hear, and sometimes we look but we don't really see. The whole attitude of the scriptures, of course, is that one has first and foremost a trust and a belief and a conviction that what Jesus has to offer is worthwhile. And we're focused on that as a result. And so if a person has that level of faith, there's a tendency perhaps to listen a bit more clearly than you would otherwise. We also notice from our own experience that sometimes somebody will say something to us and we only catch certain parts of it, or we only hear what we want to hear, or something happens in our families and we're just kind of blind to the reality even though it's right before our eyes because of the agenda that we kind of focus into that. And so the scriptures today remind us that the reason that many of them did not understand the message of the gospel was precisely because they didn't try to. They already were focused on something entirely different. Classic example we see over and over again in the telling of the story of Jesus is the reaction and response of some of the scribes and Pharisees. He does certain miracles, he says certain things, and even as he does these miracles or says these things, they're not focused into that. They're focused into something else. More often than not, the idea that you're not fulfilling the law of the prophets, you're carrying out rubrics and things which are not allowable by the law. He even goes so crazy as to suggest that when he does heal somebody on his Sabbath, that they tell the person, "Don't come for healing on the Sabbath. You're not supposed to be walking around then. Come on another day." Jesus says in turn, only those who have been blessed with a sense of faith, those who in turn take that faith and work with it, are able to understand and see the mysteries of the kingdom. And of course, that was one of the gifts the early Christian community had. And thanks be to God, to varying degrees, that's the gift each of us has. As we gather here today, then, we're reminded that many times we don't totally understand the whole message or seek out entirely the truth. It is there for us to see and to understand if we're open to it, and if we allow God's grace to operate and take on and give us the lens out of which we're able to see more clearly what God's plan is for us.